Intro music with a somber, historical tone begins and fades into the background. Picture a world map in the late 15th century. European nations, powered by new ships and a burning hunger for wealth, set their sights on Africa. This wasn't a mission of exploration. It was the beginning of a brutal conquest. Portugal, led by Prince Henry the Navigator, was first, establishing forts like Snow Jorge da Mina in modern-day Ghana as early as 1482. Soon, Spain, Britain, France, and the Netherlands joined the fray, driven by a relentless economic theory called mercantilism. Fast forward to the late 19th century, the greed becomes formalized. At the Berlin Conference of 1884, European leaders, with Otto von Bismarck at the helm, literally drew lines on a map, carving up Africa among themselves. They paid no attention to the vibrant, ancient societies already there: the Yoruba, the Zulu, the Hausa, the Bambara. Suddenly, neighbors became subjects of different colonial powers. At the same time, Islamic principles of freedom and respect, deeply rooted in communities like the Mandinka, were completely ignored. The sheer scale of the plunder was staggering. Portuguese records alone show that between 1475 and 1500, they extracted over 50 tons of gold from West Africa. This was just the beginning of centuries of exploitation. As conquest intensified, it fueled the most horrific market imaginable, a market for human beings. The transatlantic slave trade turned Africa's beautiful coastlines into shores of sorrow. Fortresses like Cape Coast Castle in Ghana and Audagori in Senegal became prisons, holding millions of people from diverse groups like the Fan, Ewe, and Bakongo in unspeakable conditions before they were forced onto ships. Companies like Britain's Royal African Company and the Dutch West India Company made fortunes from this trade. Human beings were treated like cargo, their value determined by age and strength. Records from Liverpool show enslaved people being sold for between 10 and 40 pounds the price of livestock. African kingdoms, like the Dahomey, were often coerced into participating, a tragic disruption that tore apart the social and spiritual fabric of entire regions. The journey across the Atlantic, known as the Middle Passage, was a nightmare that defies description. Imagine being chained in the dark, suffocating belly of a ship, with ceilings just 4.5 feet high, for 6 to 12 weeks. The infamous slave ship, the Brooks, was designed for 450 people but was packed with over 600. Olada Equiano, an Igbo man who survived this ordeal, wrote in his memoir about the loathsomeness of the stench and the constant cries of the dying. In 1781, the captain of the ship Zong threw 130 to sick Africans overboard simply to collect insurance money. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a calculated business model. The Transatlantic Slave Trade Database estimates that 2 million people died during the Middle Passage alone, a maritime abyss of horror. For those who survived, a new chapter of suffering began in the Americas. They preserve spiritual practices, blending Yoruba Orisha worship with Christian elements, or secretly maintained Islamic traditions, like Omar ibn Said, who wrote his life story in Arabic while enslaved in North Carolina. The numbers are difficult to comprehend. Over 12.5 million Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic, accounting for those who died during capture and the millions of lives shattered by the collapse of their societies. Some historians estimate the total human cost could be as high as 100 million. While Europe's Industrial Revolution was fueled by the profits of slavery, African societies like the Great Oil Empire crumbled. The trade lasted for nearly 400 years, and its legacy is not just history, it is our present. The descendants of the enslaved, from the United States to Brazil to the Caribbean, continue to fight against systemic racism and inequality. Modern movements for justice echo the timeless calls for dignity and equality that were so brutally ignored. This era stands as a solemn testament to humanity's capacity for cruelty, but also to the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. It is a history we must never forget, a dark chapter that calls on us all to build a more just and compassionate world. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into our shared global history.